What's up, humans, and welcome to a new Psicoactivo. Happy Friday, everybody. I hope everybody's doing okay. Okay, so I just finished reading a few weeks ago, amongst the many books that I've been reading over the last year, one of the most fascinating ones that I've seen so far. And I want to talk about it because I think it's both talks about the remote viewing skill that humans have. It talks about one of the most talented remote viewers ever, and it talks about a really puzzling and mysterious character who people have been wanting to know who it is and have been asking around to people who might know, and none of them really have a good idea of who this character is. The book I am talking about is Penetration by Ingo Swan. This book goes into Ingo's remote viewing job that he took from a mysterious character from a mysterious agency, where he was taken to their facility. He was blindfolded, and when he was taken there, he met a very mysterious character called Axelrod, which is sort of like a nickname or a code name. This Axelrod fella gave an assignment to Ingo Swan to remote view the moon. And according to Ingo in this book, Penetration, he remote viewed the dark side of the moon or the far side of the moon. And he allegedly saw structures, craft, beings. And according to him in that book, that was disclosure for him. He realized that, according to him, that there were some kind of entities that were working on the moon, and they had sort of bases on the moon. And one of the most mysterious parts of this entire book is this character, Axelrod. To those of you who don't know who Ingo Swan is, this is him. When I finished reading the book, I've spoken to Nick Cook about Ingo in an episode I did last year with him. He was one of my first interviews. And right after I finished the book, I contacted Nick and I asked him, I was like, do you know who Axelrod is? And he was like, nope, nobody has ever found out who he is. There are rumors that he was some kind of a politician that was part of some kind of program, but nothing was ever confirmed on who Axelrod was. And I just find that story fascinating. So I started looking into some of the potential accounts from somebody from the UFO community who knew more about this. And I found a really cool clip from Rich Dolan that I'm going to show you. This is from his channel on YouTube. So I'm going to show you this. Here's Rich Dolan talking about that book, Penetration, and Ingo Swan's remote viewing job in the moon, and about this mysterious figure, Mr. Axelrod.
Ingo, what do you know about the moon? This is a story, I'm sure some of you are familiar with it. I'm sure many of you may not. Ingo Swan, who recently passed away, was one of the top remote viewers in the US intelligence community back in the 1970s and 80s. And by the mid-1970s, he was already a legend. And the reason he was a legend is because Ingo Swan remote viewed Jupiter before our first probe, our space probe, ever reached it. Ingo was bored one day. He goes to his boss, Hal Puthoff, and says, I'm bored with remote viewing Soviet submarines all the time. Let's do something interesting. And Hal Puthoff said, well, what would you like to do? And they decided he was going to remote view Jupiter in advance of our first probe out there. What Ingo Swan did is he identified, I believe it was 13 specific data points about the planet Jupiter, none of which were known at the time, one of which included the existence of a planetary ring. Pretty nifty. And it was shortly after that that ring was confirmed. This made Ingo Swan highly coveted by all kinds of Black World projects and programs who then would ask him to do remote viewing work for them. So he gets a phone call from a mysterious guy named Axelrod one day, who says, I need you to be at the Smithsonian Institute in Washington, D.C. tomorrow at noon. Ingo was in New York City at the time, and it was a 2 a.m. phone call. He says, well, okay, I'll be there.
So this about Jupiter, I checked on it and it actually did happen. So if whoever keeps telling you that this remote viewing is not real, they need to go back to the history and see what Ingo Swan did. And today, even there are many remote viewers that are really good. Richard Dolan's wife is a really good remote viewer, actually. There's Das Smith. There are others too. I've seen my friend Asap Rocky remote view some stuff, and the accuracy he has is remarkable. So this is a skill that is real. It does happen and it is repeatable. So I wanted to let you guys know that. And yeah, Ingo did see the ring in Jupiter before this probe passed by. So that's pretty fascinating.
Takes a train down there and has this incredible cloak and dagger experience with these two twins who are very military. They look identical to each other. They don't speak. They communicate by cue cards. They take him into a vehicle, a car, where they blindfold him. He's not happy about this, but they go. They drive and drive and drive. They get out. They get into a helicopter. They go somewhere else. They land. He's still blindfolded. They go to a building after walking an enormous distance, into an elevator, down, 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 down. Elevator doors open. Blindfold comes off, and here's Axel Rod. And he pays Ingo a lot of money for the week, and he says, I'd like you to do some remote viewing for us. And the first question he says is, what do you know about the moon? Ingo Swan says, well, not a whole lot. Okay, well, here are 10 coordinates. I'd like you to remote view them. Ingo Swan does. And what does he see? He sees structures. He sees buildings. He sees people or beings. And as he sees them, he says, they're looking at me. Axel Rod says, come away from there very quickly. He spends a week doing this. At the end of the week, he writes a detailed report about the efficiency of remote viewing, its strengths and limitations, and so forth. What was it that he was seeing on the moon? Well, it's not proof that he was seeing actual structures. I mean, remote viewing can be effective. It's not 100%. But Ingo Swan saw structures on the moon. And incidentally, it's my own opinion that the Axelrod operation was some form of counterintelligence. After all, let's just say you're not from here. And let's just say that your operation involves, among other things, telepathy, mind-to-mind communication. Just pretend it happened, because it might be the case. And these Americans are now creating this new remote viewing program. You might want to know how vulnerable you are. You might want to test these remote viewers. There's a lot of other things about the Ingo Swan Axelrod encounter that lead one to that conclusion. But the point for here is that Ingo Swan saw stuff, artificial things on the moon, including the far side of the moon.
So yeah, when I was reading the book, I was riveted by the mysteriousness of everything surrounding Axelrod. The fact that the twins met Ingo at the Smithsonian, and they even checked for his tattoo that he had. They sort of had like notes of what to do and what to ask Ingo. Axelrod was, according to the book, according to Ingo, was a very soft-spoken gentleman who was always dressed very well. He always wore a tie. He didn't really lose his cool ever. And he didn't strike him as somebody from one of the known intelligence agencies, three-letter agencies. He thought he was from some other kind of entity. And when they stopped working, when they finished that assignment, Axelrod told Ingo that if he was ever called by someone to ask him about this stuff, or ask him about anything, he needed to deny it, because it was probably somebody who was intending to harm him in some way. And he wasn't told who was going to call him, but eventually Ingo did get a call from a journalist, and Ingo denied everything. And that was very interesting to me, because that tells me that whatever organization Axelrod worked for was not part of the government, was a rogue type of organization, and who knows who they're in league with. Another story that I want to tie to this is something that happened related to Jacobo Grinberg, who I talk about in the channel quite a bit. This story comes from one of his students who is also a scientist. His name is Jose Luis Bueno. And he was one of the people working with Jacobo right before he disappeared in different experiments. They were actually starting to conduct an experiment with lasers at the time. And people in the US right now, whom I try to ask about Jacobo, a lot of them, they tell me they don't know who Jacobo is. I've been trying to speak to Dr. Jacques Vallée for a while. I've been trying to reach out to Dr. Hal Puthoff. I've been ignored. I've been told by people who are part of the UFO community who are also curious about Jacobo that they were curious about it and they made contact with Jacques Vallée and Hal Puthoff, unrelated, and they were conversing and going back and forth. And right at the moment when this person asked and mentioned Jacobo, he was ghosted. So there's that. So people from the intel community and the scientific community at the time knew perfectly well who Jacobo was. According to this doctor, Jose Luis Bueno, he took a trip to the US representing Jacobo. And when he arrived there, everybody was treating him really well. And everybody was excited to send stuff to Jacobo and ask him questions through Jose Luis. And he really spoke candidly about this experience. But there was one encounter he had with a gentleman who was very well dressed, who had a soft spoken voice, who approached him and told him about this experiment with lasers that they were doing. And it was so recent that it was impossible for anybody to know they were running this experiment. Yet this person knew exactly what they were doing. And he even gave him details about where the experiment was taking place and where the some of the artifacts were being placed inside the room of the experiment, which is an eerily accurate detailing of things. And this really spooked Jose Luis. The very first question he wanted to ask was if they were from some kind of intelligence agency like the CIA. So he asked, "Are you guys CIA, or are you from the CIA?" And this gentleman just laughed it off. It was like, "No, no, no, no. We're something else. We're something different." And Jose Luis was very curious about this. He was given documents, envelopes actually, that he took to Jacobo back to him. And I just think that whatever agency or whatever entity approached Jose Luis, it really did feel very similar to Axelrod and whatever entity he worked for when they were contacting Ingo Swan. Right now, nobody knows who Axelrod is. There's this picture that I want to show you guys that I found really fascinating. If you guys know who this guy in the middle is, please let me know. But right at the top right corner, you can see Ingo Swan's distinctive beard right here. And then right here, the man with the white hair, if you guys don't recognize him, that is Werner von Braun, the Nazi scientist who was brought to the US after World War II, who co founded NASA and who is partly responsible for Americans going to the moon. Then on the left, we have Uri Geller, the Israeli psychic who was brought to the US by Dr. Andrea Puharich. And they conducted many experiments with him. And then in the middle, I don't know who this guy is. It's not Pat Price. It's not Hal Puthoff. It's not Russell Targ. So who is this gentleman with the tie? I don't know if this might be Axelrod, but I did find this picture and I thought it was worth showing it to you guys. So you guys can help me do some detective work and find out who this Axelrod might be. That name was also mentioned after in another book, which is titled Skinwalkers at the Pentagon. George Knapp co-wrote that book, and they talk about another figure whose name is also Axel Rod. However, this Axelrod is different from the one in penetration. I think that this Axelrod could be Jay Stratton. You go read the book, go read what happened to that Axelrod, and tell me if you think that could be Jay Stratton. I think it is, but maybe I'm wrong. So, who is Axelrod? I wonder. I couldn't find out, but maybe you guys can help us and find out who this Axelrod is. And I recommend you, highly recommend you to read Penetration. It's one of the best books I've read about the subject. And it's really mysterious about the moon and everything. So let me know what you think about the book. Let me know what you think about who this Axelrod character is. And what do you think about this remote viewing assignment that took Ingo Swan to stardom, basically, in the remote viewing world? Because what he did with that Jupiter ring, that was pretty freaking amazing, if you ask me. And let me know what you think about remote viewing in general. If you like the content you see, I'm going to ask you to like, share, comment, subscribe, and hit the bell icon. That's all you need to do in order to help us, and it is what helps us the most, so thank you. But if you want to help us in any other way, there's a few links down there you can choose from. You can become a member on YouTube, or you can support us through KGRA. How do you do that? You can either go to any platform you like where we have all the interviews, or you can go to the KGRA website. They're the ones who helped Psicoactivo get on every platform, so thank you, KGRA. That's it for me today on this video, but I'll see you guys in the next one. Remember, stay curious and inquisitive, like Ingo Swan, always. Bye.